And welcome back to the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Jean-Luc Ponty, his biography and best hits. Jean-Luc Ponty is a violinist who completely reshaped jazz fusion. From his classical beginnings in France to his groundbreaking work with electric violin in the US, Ponty's journey is as inspiring as it's musical. On today's show, we're going to be talking about his life story, from his early training and rise as a young prodigy to his collaborations with Frank Zappa, the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and the many bands that he led that define an era of jazz. We'll also dive into the albums that made him a legend. Albums like Upon the Wings of Music, Imaginary Voyage, Enigmatic Ocean, and Cosmic Messenger. You'll hear how his violin interacts with musicians like Alan Holdsworth and Ralph Armstrong, and how each track mingles technical brilliance with expressive storytelling. And that was a quick recap of the biography and best hits of Jean-Luc Ponty. More details coming up. And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. We'll be right back after some music. Stay tuned. And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Jean-Luc Ponty, his life and times and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about his biography. Jean-Luc Ponty wasn't just a violinist, he was a pioneer who completely changed the way the violin could fit into jazz. Born in France in 1942, Ponty started with classical training. By his teenage years, he was already a highly skilled violinist, performing in orchestras and honing his technique. But what really sets him apart is that he didn't stay in the classical world. He was curious, hungry, and wanted to explore new musical frontiers. In the 1960s, Ponty started experimenting with jazz, inspired by people like Stéphane Grappelli and later Miles Davis. He moved to the US in the late 1960s, where his collaborations began to define jazz fusion. You might know him from working with Frank Zappa in the early 70s, blending rock energy with jazz sophistication. Then came his time with the Mahavishnu Orchestra, where his electric violin fit perfectly into complex high-energy fusion compositions. Ponty didn't just play notes, he told stories with his violin. He was one of the first people to really embrace the electric violin in jazz, layering it with synthesizers and guitars, creating a sound that was futuristic yet lyrical. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, he led his own bands, producing albums that are now considered classics: Imaginary Voyage, Enigmatic Ocean, Cosmic Messenger. Ponty's influence reached far beyond fusion. He opened the door for violinists in jazz and world music. He's a musician who blends technique, emotion, and innovation seamlessly, and every album that he's touched carries that signature voice. For listeners today, Ponty's music isn't just about virtuosity, it's about feeling, storytelling, exploration. From the soaring peaks of his solos to the subtle, intimate moments of his compositions, Ponty's journey is a masterclass in what it means to take an instrument beyond its traditional boundaries. And that was some insight into the biography of Jean-Luc Ponty, and this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. And welcome back to the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Jean-Luc Ponty, his biography and best hits. Now it's time for some trending music news. Rising German saxophonist Marubia has just released a highly anticipated album, A Seeker's Dream, on Inner Circle Music. Released on October 7, 2025, this is his second album and is already turning heads for its deeply personal genre-blurring approach. Marubia blends spiritual depth of Nordic and spiritual jazz with ambient soundscapes, trip-hop grooves, and lush cinematic arrangements, creating music that really draws you inward. Influenced by legends like John Coltrane, Pharoah Sanders, Wayne Shorter, and Jan Garbarek, Marubia has taken those traditions and created her own singular contemporary voice. Her soundscapes have been described as having a sense of nocturnal elegance, perfect for quiet reflection or late-night listening. This album features 9 original compositions. Tracks like As Far as the Heart Can See and What If and Gift Us Peace explore personal transformation, social reflection, and the call to inner change. Marubia herself performs on tenor and soprano saxophones, bass, clarinet, and vocals. She is joined by Fontaine Burnett, her longtime collaborator, on bass, piano, synthesizers, and drums. Their partnership really creates this fluid, cohesive sound that really lets the emotional depth of the music shine. So if you're looking for something that's introspective, innovative, and utterly captivating, check out A Seeker's Dream, a meditation on presence, connection, and musical honesty from one of Europe's most exciting new voices in jazz. And that was some trending album news on the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. We're going for a short break. We'll be right back after that. When we come back, we're going to be talking about some of Jean-Luc Ponty's best albums of all time. Stay tuned. And welcome back to the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashanti Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Jean-Luc Ponty, his biography and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about some of his best albums. Here's a quick recap of what's coming up. To start off, we'll hear some of Ponty's pieces from the mid-1970s. You'll catch the signature sound that made him a fusion legend, soaring electric violin lines, intricate rhythms, and unforgettable melodies. Tracks like Upon the Wings of Music burst with energy, while Aurora adds that lyrical melody touch that defines Ponty's style. Imaginary Voyage offers an epic 4-part journey balancing complexity and storytelling, and Enigmatic Ocean is high energy, with Alan Holdsworth guitar intertwining with Ponty's violin in thrilling ways. Each album highlights the musicianship of his collaborators, from Ralph Armstrong on bass to Rayford Griffin on drums, creating inventive, timeless fusion music. On this week's episode, it's about Jean-Luc Ponty, his biography and best hits. During this hour, we're going to talk about some of his best albums of all time. The first one's called Upon the Wings of Music, released in 1975. Now, here's the thing about Upon the Wings of Music. This is where Ponty really begins to stretch out on the electric violin and show the world what jazz fusion could sound like in the mid-70s. Released in 1975 on Atlantic Records, this album was his first fully solo effort with a band that perfectly complements his vision. You've got Patrick Rushen on keyboards, Daryl Stuermer on guitar, and Ralph Armstrong holding down the bass. This ensemble wasn't just background, they were in dialogue with Ponty's violin, pushing harmonic and rhythmic boundaries. Tracks like Upon the Wings of Music set the tone right away. Bright, fast and lyrical, but still deeply rooted in improvisation. Then there's Forms of Life, where Ponty's bow dances over complex chord changes, weaving in and out of the electric piano textures. And you can't forget Clouds, which has this almost orchestral sweep, giving the violin a voice that feels almost human in its expression. You can really hear its classical roots, but it's energized with jazz rock fusion. By the time this album landed, people were starting to see Ponty not just as a violinist, but as a fusion pioneer whose music demanded attention. Moving on to Aurora, released the next year in 1976, Ponty refines that electric violin tone even further. It's lyrical, melodic and still adventurous. Alan Holdsworth guests on guitar for several tracks. His fluid legato lines complement Ponty's soaring violin perfectly. The rhythm section, with Rayford Griffin on drums and Ralph Armstrong still on bass, locks into grooves that feel simultaneous, intricate and natural. Check out Aurora Part 1. It's almost like a sunrise captured in sound. Ponty layers multiple violin textures, sometimes doubling with the synth, creating these shimmering harmonies. Then Aurora Part 2 kicks into a more rhythmic drive, and you can hear the fusion influence of the Mahavishnu Orchestra in the energy and complexity. One of the all-time favorites here is Pliant, a shorter track, but it's all elegance. Ponty's violin articulates subtle phrasing that feels both precise and emotive. This album shows his mastery over the fusion palette. Melody, rhythm and improvisation all balance beautifully. Next up, Imaginary Voyage, also from 1976. Now this is where Ponty really gets epic. The title track is a 4-part suite that takes the listener on a journey, literally. It starts with Imaginary Voyage Part 1, which opens with spacious texture, setting a dreamlike scene. By Part 2 and Part 3, this interplay between Ponty's violin and Holdsworth guitar is breathtaking. The rhythm section of Griffin and Armstrong is masterful, maintaining propulsion while giving space for solos to breathe. One great thing about this album is the balance between technical brilliance and emotional storytelling. Tracks like Chocola showcase rhythmic inventiveness, while Waving Memories bring in lyricism that feels almost cinematic. You can hear his progression from Aurora here. Ponty's voice on the violin is confident, expressive and commanding, and the ensemble plays like a single organism. Finally, let's talk about Enigmatic Ocean from 1977, an album that's high energy, adventurous and features none other than Alan Holdsworth on guitar once again. Now here's the thing about this record, it's intense, it's precise, but it's never mechanical. Ponty's violin sings above Holdsworth's lightning-fast guitar lines, Rayford Griffin's intricate drumming and Ralph Armstrong's fluid bass. Tracks like The Struggle of the Turtle to the Sea open the album with a cinematic sweep, full of tension and release. Enigmatic Ocean Part 1 and Part 2 are suites in themselves, shifting moods, tempos and tonal colors. This album cemented Ponty as a leading voice in the fusion movement. He wasn't just following trends, he was And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jean-Luc Ponty. On this week's episode, it's about Jean-Luc Ponty, his biography and best hits. Now it's time for some trending music news. The 14th annual Sarah Vaughan International Jazz Vocal Competition has announced its top 5 finalists, selected from nearly 200 entrants across 27 countries. These rising jazz stars represent the next generation of vocal talent, and they're going to be competing on November 23rd at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center in Newark, New Jersey. The finalists include Diamond Franklin from Philadelphia, Candace Jones from Hollywood, Katie Cotton from New York City, Julia Moscardini from Argentina, and Emma Smith from London. They'll perform in front of a panel of jazz heavyweights including Christian McBride, Ann Hampton Callaway, John Faddis and Janice Siegel, judged on vocal quality, artistry, technique and performance. Past winners of this prestigious competition, also known as the Sarsi Awards, include stars like Samara Joy and Jasmine Hahn. It's a one-of-a-kind platform for discovering the jazz vocalists of tomorrow, and a chance to see the artistry, the passion and the individuality that will shape the future of jazz. So if you love vocal jazz, this is an event to watch, a celebration of talent, creativity and the legacy of Sarah Vaughan herself. And that was some trending music news on the Weekend Jazz Update with Jean-Luc. We're going for a short break, we'll be right back after that. When we come back, we're going to be talking about more of Jean-Luc Ponty's best albums of all time. Stay tuned.